This is Chief Mike Koval from the City of Madison Police Department, and I thought that under the circumstances that I ought to do a video release to our constituents, because we have all been waiting, hovering if you will, since June of this past summer. And at this juncture, all the process-driven mechanisms that have taken as long as it has have now been formalized and completed. So as you may recall, dating back to June, there was a disturbance that occurred at the East Towne Mall involving a young African-American woman, and in that context of responding to the call, officers tried to effect an arrest. That arrest, in parts, was captured on an excerpt. That excerpt made its way through social media and quickly went viral. And owing to the visual imagery of what occurred in that attempt to place the defendant under arrest, that catapulted our entire community into a sense of dizzying polarity, to be honest with you. Sides were taken, divisive words were exchanged, and at the end of the day, the police are there to fortify community, to unify, to have us speak from a place of common ground. And clearly, the fact that this incident generated so much high-profile media attention meant that we have found ourselves in a place where many in our community feel disenfranchised or unconnected, or worse, have feelings of mistrust towards the police. And that concerns me because one of the tenets of our mission is that we want to be accessible to all of our citizenry in providing qualitative services. So as a result of the review, independent review of the Dane County Sheriff's Department, who had subject matter experts skilled in the curriculum known as DAT, Defense and Arrest Tactics, owing to their independent investigation of this matter, their findings have determined that the officers involved in this incident were in fact acting lawfully within the scope of their training, consistent with state statutes and the curriculum known as DAT. Subsequently, we also did an MPD independent review with our own subject matter expert to see whether any of our policies or procedures had been violated. And that conclusion was in fact the same, that the officers were acting within the scope of their training and employment. Knowing how highly volatile this entire situation would be, we also had the sheriff's report brought over to the district attorney for a referral in looking at whether there was any criminal culpability, as some in our community suggested there might be. We also learned from the district attorney that there was no criminal culpability associated in effecting the lawful arrest of the defendant. Where do we go from here? The fact remains is that when we're using force, it should be extremely infrequent, and it should only be under the most dire circumstances, and it ought to be able to pass the litmus test of what the community will tolerate or can abide by. We have a hearing, we have a finding, we have a mechanism for determining justifiability of what officers' actions are. And in the context of these independent reviews that were made, the justifiability, the fact that their actions were lawful, is only part of a calculus that goes to community trust. When force is administered, it must also be administered mindful of what's the desirability of those methods or techniques used. And in the instant case, certainly reasonable people can disagree on the fact that it did not pass that sense of public image or the desirability of what type of force should be used. And I get that, and I know there's dissonance, and I know there's a gap in that. And I've heard loud and clear from focus groups, from listening sessions, through emails, cards, phone calls. We have to do better, and we will do better, because like this call, like any call, Our hope is that we can continue to improve upon the systems we deliver. Systems improvement is a moniker in our core values, and we're committed to that. In moving forward, however, I don't want anyone to think that this is an end game, that the books have been closed and that we're not going to be reviewing what we do since we passed this legal sufficiency test. That's not enough for us. We have done numerous initiatives which I've described fully on a blog and in a letter to the community, and I won't dwell on that here. What I wanted to do using this vehicle, this message, is to be able to say, I'm sorry for those harms that some in our community feel has been occasioned by the actions of our officers. Having said that, I don't think any of us would wish that the defendant in this case, a young 18-year-old woman, I don't think that it's fair to her for the rest of her life to use this incident as the identity for which she lives. It's not fair to her. We want her to succeed. We want her to have a clear record with no criminal arrests or prosecutions. Similarly, two officers whose body of work has been extremely good while they've been at the Madison Police Department never sought to or wanted to have this call capture their identities. They enlisted in the service to the community, for the community, and with the community, with no thought that this would be the kinds of things that they would ever want to be engaged in or be seen as. Finally, I certainly do not want the legacy of MPD with 470 selfless servant guardians. I don't want our legacy to be captured as a use of force caption. That's not who we are. That's not who we want to be. And moving forward, I'm hopeful that people will understand that through the restorative justice court process, many, many inroads have already been met. I'm grateful that the officers in this instance were willing to initiate restorative justice as an option for the resolution of this case. I'm grateful for their participation. I'm very grateful to the defendant in this matter for her participation. And I'm hoping that through this community restorative court initiative, we can all make inroads on healing, reconciliation, and continue to foster the trust bonds that we seek as community police officers. Thank you.